tear down the house, then you put up the rent. You pocket the cash, and you crush all dissent. You pour all the water.
Hello and welcome to the Red Diaper Pail, episode 20. Today is Monday, January 26th. This is a podcast about art, culture, history, politics, technology, and parenting from a left perspective, and my name is Simone.
And I'm John Paul.
We're in the midst of a weather event across the country.
Indeed.
Where we got a lot of snow. So we just had a snow day with all our kids.
Yep. So it's been a really long fucking weekend.
Long weekend, long day, lots of shoveling, and they all had fun. So yeah, lots of kid stuff this weekend. And then, of course, we got to do it in the midst of horrifying news.
Yes.
So that has been the combination that we've been living out for a while now. But yeah. So on Saturday in Minneapolis around 9 a.m, U.S. federal agents shot and killed Alex Preddy, a Minneapolis ICU nurse who was observing immigration officials in the city.
Yep.
The video was up on social media really fast. So
yeah, it was another one of those days where every single thing on my Instagram was the video.
Yeah. And, he was there. He was filming. He was helping a woman who was who had been pushed, and he was pepper sprayed in the face, and then he was wrestled to the ground and executed.
Yeah.
So
he was armed. He never drew his weapon, although he was trying to not be forced to the ground. But they would pull the weapon out of his holster, and then a different agent shot him in the head, and then they shot him 9 more times. They backed up and just shot him a bunch of times.
The agent who had pepper sprayed him is the same agent who shot him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm sure our listeners have been feeling the trauma and despair of watching that unfold. And it's a horrifying headline.
The right wing spent the weekend trying to justify this with just their usual shitty politics, and then with increasingly deranged lies.
Yeah.
One was that he was actually assaulting the woman that the ICE had just shoved, and he's trying to pull to her feet.
Yeah.
And another one was that he had drawn the weapon.
Yes.
Which is obviously and immediately contradicted by the video evidence.
Yes. Blatant lies. Another one of those where you see what's happening, and you have the most powerful politicians and people in the United States telling you something completely different is happening.
Yeah.
It's extremely sad. There was immediately a response in Minneapolis at the site, protesters at the site. I mean, the day prior, there had been a general strike in Minneapolis with significant civil disobedience and people picketing the airport where they're shipping people, detained people out. Hundreds of clergy arrested doing civil disobedience at the airport in negative 20-degree weather. I mean, just incredible scenes of solidarity and protest. Certainly, I've seen some activists on the ground and other folks commenting on it, suggesting that this was a retaliation against the this is a type of retaliation you see after action.
A strong pushback that the community organizes, which hurts the whole optics, because this whole thing hinges on the idea that undocumented immigrants are terrorizing these communities. So what could possibly explain the fact that Minneapolis is united and wanting ICE gone doesn't add up? So you have to come up with a story that everyone's a deranged left-wing lunatic or something.
Yeah. Some interesting thing that came out of this weekend. It seemed to be an even further tipping point in the sort of zeitgeist, even from where we were with Renee Good, where you just had, every mom influencer I follow, every Peloton instructor I follow saying something. So I do think we sort of hit a point where normies and mainstream folks were willing to say something, which does, lead to this, is the administration losing the narrative? There were also a couple of reports previous to Alex being murdered, and henceforth from his murder, of Trump being upset that he was starting to lose the narrative. So, a difficult and complicated time. You did see the administration seemingly come down pretty hard, pretty fast, doing the whole, they calling him a domestic terrorist, saying things like he was armed and dangerous. He wanted to do harm to these agents. He wanted to massacre them. I heard one of them say. And then you had Bondi the next day issue the same day, issue a letter to Governor Walz's office saying that the Border Patrol would withdraw, or at least they would cease this current operation if Minneapolis agreed to several terms, including turning over their voter rolls, and then some other terms related to like investigating fraud, which is wild.
Yeah, that's completely crazy because she's trying to extort political wins out of Minnesota. Some of it related to undocumented immigrants, but mostly it just gives the impression that this is completely unnecessary and is politically driven, and that they would be happy to not do it if they got other things that they really wanted, which then I think just proves in practice that this is not necessary. They don't believe it's necessary. They don't believe it's for saving the community. It's because they want political
wins and extractions from a state.
Yeah. So they want to leverage an assault essentially in order to get this. They're treating it like they would treat another country, which is, you will face our military or you'll give us the things that we wanted.
They wanted full records of Medicaid and food and nutritional services programs. I guess on face value, we're supposed to understand that's to investigate fraud. They wanted a repeal to any sanctuary policies and the agreement for all facilities to completely comply with ICE. And they wanted to allow the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice access to voter rolls to confirm Minnesota's voter registration processes. And so those are fairly overreaching demands. And to do so and connect it to ICE operations it feels like what they're doing is telling you exactly, like, there's no lip service to even pretending that this is about taking violent criminal immigrants off the street, and that this really is a political extortion.
Yeah. It plays into this thing that has existed in the right way for some time, which is that the animating thing about the movement is revenge on people that they think look down on them or have different ideas than them.
Yep.
But it's about inflicting cruelty, and then the base can lap it up, which I think is a reason why I think that the strategy is to escalate things and get protesters like beat up or shot with less than lethal stuff, or in this case shot literally, is part of the strategy, which is like demoralizing and inflicting violence upon
and terrorizing.
Countries. Yeah,
I guess it's been a whirlwind of headlines given this execution. Also notable last week, though, is that they did send a significant surge into Portland, Maine, and Lewiston, Maine, which have sizable Somali populations. So you were seeing another step in this direction of like targeting particular populations for some reason, whether it's retribution or just general dislike of a particular immigrant group, or maybe a geopolitical reason. There are millions of illegal immigrants in the United States. A very small percentage of them are in Maine. A very, very small percentage of them are Somali.
Yeah.
A very small percentage of them are in Minnesota. Most of them are in Florida and Texas. So it does beg some questions about who they're targeting and why. And I think they're showing their hand.
Yeah. The obsession with Somalis is, I think, notable because it is such a small percentage of the population, and almost all Somalis in the United States are citizens. So it feels to me like too many people have good relationships with hardworking, law-abiding, tax-paying Latinos. But if you do the Somali thing, you can sort of you can rely on some of the really racist caricatures we've gotten in movies and stuff, like the Tom Hanks movie or Black Hawk Down, where they really seem very different than what something outside of most people's experience, where you can sort of paint them however you want. And I think the right in particular has a particular distaste for Black people that this can be used to sort of energize support. But I don't know what to make of the fact of this obsession with it. Almost feels personal, or feels like some sort of strange ideological thing that just got passed around the White House, which is there's something about Somalis that is particularly dangerous.
Yeah.
Which is a deranged, I don't know.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things to talk about coming out of this weekend. One is related to some of the organizing and statements we're seeing. So obviously, yeah, Peloton instructors are saying things, but more importantly, a bunch of different unions have made statements. Alex Preddy was in a union. He was in the AFGE. He was a member of the AFGE Local 3669. That's the American Federation of Government Employees. So there's two things to say here. His membership in a union matters, I think, in how this is sort of the next steps and how this is being handled. I think that it puts, unfortunately, because he was killed and also because he was a union member and that he has that membership, that it forces that union to sort of decide whether they're going to honor and protect their members. So they have made statements. The strange thing about the AFGE is that it also seems that it's very likely his shooter could be in that union. So the AFGE...
No kidding.
The AFGE...
covers ICE?
Also includes Customs and Border Patrol officials. So now the AFGE has, of course, claimed that they are his union and that they are in support of him and horrified by the tragedy. They have not claimed whether or not, well, we don't know who the shooter is, but they have not. Is
that true? They haven't released the name of the shooter?
But it has caused obviously some calls to be like, these people cannot be in our unions. You have to expel Customs and Border Patrol and ICE officials from these unions.
Yeah, no kidding. You do not have cops in your union.
No.
Period.
I certainly don't have the Gestapo in your union. It's a bad call. So like, obviously that needs to stop. They need to revoke union membership from all of these thugs. Also today, the AFL-CIO, which is, I think, the largest union in the United States, it has 15 million members, issued a statement saying, it's a tragedy. Our thoughts are with his family. And as tens of thousands of Minnesotans made clear peacefully and powerfully, the Trump administration's horrific operation and their actions aimed at stoking violence and chaos must end. America's unions join the call for ICE to immediately leave Minnesota before anyone else is hurt and killed. We demand local authorities to conduct a full, transparent investigation that will lead to accountability for this tragic and violent act, and for Congress to use its full power to hold ICE accountable.
This is a big deal. You sort of wonder what the holdup was. I don't know if it's because he was a union member or because this one is so horrendous, but this does seem to have gotten the unions. I went to, in our area, there's been a bunch of rallies and solidarity marches, but I went to one that was called by the unions in the area, which I think is new.
Yeah, that was in solidarity with the general strike in Minnesota. So I think a bunch of things are happening. I think you have sustained protest in Minnesota around the Twin Cities that is undeniable and not slowing down. So you have ever since Renee Good was killed, really intense activation in the Twin Cities, including intense, at least doubling down, if not further escalation from the occupying force. You have a fairly successful general strike in the Twin Cities area where tens of thousands of people were in the streets, not going to work, not going to schools. Most local businesses were closed. So that gives you a sense of at least local labor organizing. I think our unions are not used to understanding how to leverage their power, their economic power, and they're a little bit slow to catch up. So I think potentially you've seen a few weeks of them being like, do we need to do something? What are we going to do?
For a very long time, union power has been mostly meant for like economist reasons. Like, we're going to get our union members a better deal at work. And they really have not had the like gumption or imagination to use it for political ends.
Yeah. I think it also has taken people a bit of processing time to, in a clear-eyed way, most people who are maybe not like, you and I talk about the rise of fascism like more freely in our day-to-day than like perhaps is normal. But like, I think it took some processing time for folks, especially in Minnesota, but just watching to be like, wait, is this really what I think it is?
Yeah.
Kind of. So I think
even the Atlantic thinks this is fascism now.
Yeah. So I think it was kind of a slow uptake. I was on an organizing call last night that had union leadership from Minneapolis and Minnesota, and their clear calls to action for our local area were to build solidarity networks in your own neighborhood, which is a very intelligent action to take as far as neighborhood defense. But it was very clearly linked to prepare for a general strike, because if you were to have a general strike, if you were to have a big union like the teachers union calling for a strike, or the transportation authority in your local city calling on a strike, you actually do need support locally in neighborhoods and mutual aid because you need strike funds. You need people to be able to help each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that they're definitely, and this isn't just like activists saying, hey, we should strike. I think that there's quite a bit of organizing of what would it look like to strike in order to protect our cities from ICE. So the AFL-CIO saying that this morning. They didn't say, if you don't do this, we will strike. However, they're making a demand that ICE has to leave Minnesota. And that's a big deal. It's a huge union.
Yeah. The thing about it is, like, the restraining factor here is the money behind Trump. And this is the most direct way to fuck with them is to threaten a strike. There should be also, I think, be calls around like non-consumption, like specific boycotts and things like that. But the best possible way is an organized labor revolt, basically.
Yeah. I mean, I keep thinking, like, if the Teamsters just go on strike, this thing's over. If the Teamsters are like, get ICE out of all the cities, or there's no Teamsters doing shit. I mean, talk about grinding the economy of America to a halt. But I think appreciate the AFL-CIO going out front on this.
I wonder if they're worried that there's people in the Trump administration certainly who would like a showdown with labor more than anything else, and would be willing to use these new this little paramilitary force they're developing that's full of the stupidest right-wing people that you can summon in your mind. And I think they're worried about what it would look like for like people like union leaders to start getting arrested, or people getting compelled back to work at gunpoint, or face charges for not being at work.
They should be worried about that. History clearly tells you that is the escalation here. That when unions do use their actual economic power to withhold labor, and they're up against authoritarian forces or just extremely strongman capitalist forces, they get killed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the question is if this is the showdown that the administration wants. So today, Carolyn Leavitt, one of the 3 women who are pregnant and associated closely with the administration, but we're not going to talk about the pregnancy pact in this episode.
By example.
Yeah, the pregnancy pact is not our topic today. Very clearly made a choice to distance President Trump from the rhetoric made by certain high-profile members of his administration this weekend. Most notably, Kristi Noem, but also Stephen Miller, and of course, our Sean Penn impersonating little man, Bovine-o. Bovine-o.
You have to say Bovine-o.
Greg Bovine-o.
Yeah, because he's a cow.
He's a little cow. So they asked Leavitt about what Kristi Noem said about Alex Preddy being a domestic terrorist and brandishing a weapon. And Leavitt said she had not heard Trump use those words to describe Preddy, and that they are in favor of an investigation.
An investigation into this guy is very interesting. Do you think that the administration would shield all of these people, even if they knew they'd fucked up? But apparently not.
Yep. However, I've heard the president say he wants to let the facts and the investigation lead itself, is what Leavitt said.
That's an interesting phrase, but
yes,
the one cardinal sin in the Trump administration is to make Trump look bad. I think he really feels like this made him look bad. So someone,
there were some reports. CNN had a couple of reports that he was very mad about already losing the narrative pre this murder, and now he's really lost the narrative. Now, my theory is that our dear friends at CNN might be just planting those seeds just to get him to back down, because he loves to consume media about himself, and he really wants to be like well liked, or doing being seen as the big guy who's doing the daddy who's taking care of everyone. And so now it's like planted in his little head. Maybe he's upset about this.
He's not even upset. He's just looking at the news and being like, the news is telling me I'm upset about that. Yeah. There's nothing I love more than the news about myself. So I'm now going to go run around the White House being mad about this because CNN told me what it was.
Yeah, well, they definitely, Monday, the Trump people, the people who speak for Trump, definitely were not saying what Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller and Greg Bovine-o have been saying. They did not use domestic terrorist. They did not go on about the gun. I mean, Kash Patel also was like, you don't bring a loaded gun to a protest unless you're trying to affect mass violence, which of course is extremely hypocritical.
And also, like, not true and not agreed by most people.
Right. So the gun's a big deal in this story. So, of course, the question is, where are all the Second Amendment people?
Right. And most of the talking heads who you'd think would be big on the Second Amendment have apparently forgotten their convictions about how important the Second Amendment is.
But the NRA also came out and said they needed an investigation. And some of the other, like, gun lobby people, especially the ones local to Minnesota. So my theory is that this fissure, the sort of gun rights problem that this has caused, because Noam couldn't keep her mouth shut and they were leaning hard into, oh, he had a gun so we can kill him, is the reason Trump is backing away from saying it. That upsetting that group and having that group of people potentially peel off your base would be too damaging.
Yeah, it turns out some of these people are true believers. I thought all of them were just right-wing operatives, but I guess some of them actually believe that the Second Amendment trumps ideology.
I think that, I don't know if they're true believers in anything, but I think there is a group of people that really don't want to be told. I mean, I saw this tweet, some tweet where it's like, the people who are saying he deserved to die because he had a gun were the same people that, say don't tread on me and have a Punisher bumper sticker.
Sure.
And it's like the hypocrisy is insane. I do think that it's like the propaganda is so intense and the gaslighting is so intense that there's a group of there's a population that just is told a thing and will believe it. So if you told them Alex had a gun out, Alex wanted to murder all the law enforcement officials, the left wing is that's all they're doing in Minneapolis, they just believe it. And then I think there's a group that if you say certain things or certain things prick their ears, like, wait, I'm illegally allowed to carry a gun around without some police officer killing me.
In fact, I've gone to a lot of right-wing rallies strapping on purpose.
Right. So it gets their brain going just enough to be like, wait a second, I'm going to look at some details here, or I don't like this. Same with when Joe Rogan suddenly is like, I don't know if I like this. It's just, you get a voice that's just enough of a question mark voice that I think you could rescue some of the propagandized. You don't have to be on the left to not want to be walking around with your papers and be potentially gunned down the street because you have a gun, because some yahoo who thinks it's Call of Duty.
Yeah. Did you see the guy, the tape of the guy who's literally like, well, this is cool. This is like Call of Duty, huh?
Yeah. Also, they have tape of a guy clapping after Alex was killed. I mean, these are the fucking biggest losers in the world. So I know MAGA is not a monolith. I'm sure most of them probably are some brand of loser. But like, do you, 50-year-old man who loves his guns, really want some 24-year-old yahoo to be able to kill you because they have a gun and they work for Bovine?
Yeah.
I mean, you don't. That's very dangerous for you. So, I don't know. So then the other news coming out is that Greg Bovine-o, also known as Lockjaw, has been demoted.
He has. He's being sent back to whence he came.
He's going back to California. He no longer is in charge of the Minneapolis operation. We didn't have a problem with his Nazi coat, but we do have a problem with how he handled, I guess, this murder.
Yeah. This is Trump's way of signaling that he does not approve of this outcome.
Oh, man. They also suspended access to his social media accounts.
Oh,
he's in trouble.
Yeah.
The other thing that happened is that Trump and Waltz had a phone conversation, and Trump and Jacob Fry, the mayor of Minneapolis, had a phone conversation. And all those men left the phone conversation saying what they were supposed to say, which was, it was a good conversation. Everyone agreed that the escalation had to come down, the tensions had to come down, that we needed to resolve this problem.
Right. Which is,
so I think
you should be very
backing away.
This is a blink, and it's an important blink. It is first and foremost a way for Trump to distance himself from some of the worst excesses of what he has wrought on the country, because he doesn't want to tarnish his image. And I think we should be suspicious of liberal politicians who are like, there is some version of ICE running amok in our city, which is better than this one. I think we should be suspicious of that. That is their role, which is to sort of cool things down and find some middle way that's like just tolerable enough.
Yep.
But I do think that it's important to see, like, my suspicion is that Bovine-o was, the strategy was to escalate and escalate and escalate, that this was going to be a revenge campaign on the entire state, particularly Minneapolis, and that's what they wanted was, so for example, they would have these clips they'd post on social media of them all in a big line, and they march forward and they arrest a bunch of people and they beat up a bunch of people. And apparently the journalists who were there was like, yeah, they've been completely inside the facility all day long. They came out for 15 minutes, did that shit, disappeared because it's just a social media stunt. And I think that was Bovine-o. That's what he wanted. I think that's what everyone understood this to be about.
Yeah.
Was to just, look, our base is going to be happy when we're fucking around in Davos or whatever, because we're giving them these images.
And I do think, I mean, it's possible Bovine-o had that level of creative control and autonomy, and he was getting to play out his version. I think certainly it fits with what I've read about him. He would love that. It's also possible that he and Noam were told, go do it this way. And then, you know, they stupidly thought that would get them loyalty or someone having their back. And they could both be totally hung out to dry now.
Yeah. Serve them right.
And it would, of course, serve them right. But the other thing is, like, beware the brand. This is brand management and communications professionals now. So they're going to say, oh, we want the facts to speak for themselves. Oh, we're, you know, Bovine-o's going back. Homan's coming in. Oh, we had a good conversation with Walls. The people that are supposed to have access to this crime scene don't have access, did not have access. There's not currently an investigation being done. As of a few hours ago, his parents had not been called by an official from these departments. So, like, they could pull this back a little bit to clean it up a little bit and still do nothing of actual substance.
Yeah.
And then you're right. They could pull back this operation and still have it be a version of terror in Minneapolis, but like a less sensationalized one. Or they could just go to a different city. They could, you know, do like more lower level surges on cities and hope that we all stop talking about it.
They could do what they've been doing all along, as opposed to this sort of concentrated effort.
So I think that there's a couple of things as activists to keep in mind is that, like, yes, you want to demand, there's the demands to get that ice out of Minneapolis stand. They need to be out. However, when and if they cool it off is not an opportunity for the AFL-CIO to sit back.
Yes.
Or for all the people who are being told by their local unions to start building neighborhood groups, because we need backup and we need leverage in order to feel comfortable during a strike. All of that needs to continue to happen.
Mm-hmm. I think people should take heart, if you want to take heart in the idea that this shows that there's some restraining factor, whether it's the unions, whether it's Trump's image,
the NRA,
whether it's the NRA, who may just stumble upon a principle in their long history of.
They have a constitutional amendment they really care about.
Yeah. Whatever it is, there's some restraining factor, which if you were thinking that every chance for escalation they were wanting, right, which is where I think we were worried about, was that they were happy for every chance to escalate. This seems to disprove that thesis, that they do not want to continuously escalate until they get to full fascism.
I mean, at this moment, I also think, you know, Trump and his personality is a major player in this particular fascism equation.
Right. So you should take some heart in that, but you should also still believe that this has to go to fascism, that they really don't have another option or another strategy for doing the work they have to do, which is shore up the American economy and win a global geopolitical contest with China. And that it's going to take all the skills that people are learning, all of the connections that people are building, and that workers are going to have to start asserting their power over everything in society, which they control everything in society. They still have to continue learning how to assert that power.
Yeah, I mean, these are flashpoints where, you know, they're very scary flashpoints where you're like, it's really in your face how fragile it all can feel and how quickly your rights, your freedom, your sense of safety can be shattered, how untrustworthy and uncredible these institutions are. They are flashpoints that are in your face and very anxiety producing. And it's very nice to think that those flashpoints can be managed to something more normal. But these institutions suck. They are not trustworthy.
Yeah.
And they have a job to do, and it is not take care of us.
Yeah.
So,
and when it's the calmer, tidier, more professional version of the same shit, which is to say the liberal version of the same shit, that doesn't make it better.
Right. And when you're in these sort of anxiety spirals and you're trying to like make connections with your neighbors and stuff, it might feel like oh, thank God I don't have to be in the anxiety spiral. I can back off this work. But you need to try to manage the anxiety spiral and lean into the positivity of the connections and the potential of doing things differently and push on that.
Yeah.
There was glimpses of that during COVID. I was just joking that I've never had such a full like webinar and organizing call schedule where there's like a million things to log into to organize than as I did during COVID, because there's all this potential during COVID where people were also realizing they had to do things themselves and they had to build something different. And then it petered out, and it can't peter out.
Yeah. Because we'll be doing this on a cycle until every right is gone, or we have to fundamentally reshape society. And people like, that's the task right now, is whether this is an opportunity for that or whether this brings to mind some sort of necessity. The task is not to beat Trump. The task is to fundamentally reshape society so that Trump is impossible.
Yeah. And, it's horrifying and terrifying and not fun, but it's useful to see these institutions, the weaknesses and the lack of care they have for you. It's, when people show you who they are, believe it. When these institutions, these companies, talk about the private companies that are backing all this. When they display to you the decisions they make, they're showing you who they are. It's not going to change.
Yeah.
Okay. And also, be careful out there scrolling, people, because your nervous system is not designed to just intake it like that. It's just not.
Yeah, you're not doing activism by bombarding yourself. It's easy to feel like I have a responsibility to stand witness to what's happening. And I think there's some extent to which you should know what happened.
And you should feel it.
To talk, yeah.
You do have to feel it.
Don't close yourself to it. But also, sitting with your phone all day is not activism, and it's not making anything better. You need to get out in the community.
No, it's destroying you, and we need you.
Yeah. There's a very smart article got posted to our Substack this week by one Simone. People should read it because I think it does illustrate the ways in which you can stop wallowing in despair, or stop even wallowing in fury and whatever, and start turning that into not just positive feelings for yourself, but the infrastructure of being able to actually do something instead of impotently just witnessing it.
Yeah. And Simone didn't just make that up. It's the exact same thing that a lot of the labor-backed and community organizing people are making calls to do.
Yeah.
Simone sometimes just makes stuff up, but even when she does, she's usually right. So, hard pivot.
Okay.
This is old news, it feels, but Greenland. There was a great fight over Greenland, and a wonderful framework was arrived at.
A wonderful framework.
Trump announced a, quote, framework of a future deal with respect to Greenland after meeting with people at the World Economic Forum. It is the deal he wants. He will now back off making threats about Greenland. He's got the framework.
And the framework is nothing will change.
It is the same. Things are the same.
They have a military base there. They will continue to be able to have a military base there. NATO will continue to operate there. They've always operated there.
There won't be more tariffs over Greenland imposed. Won't do that.
No, the status quo. The people of the MAGA movement, who are the mouthpiece of the thing, are the stupidest people alive. They saw that he all he has to do is say, "Look, I got all I wanted, actually, so we're done." And they said, I saw a tweet that was like, "This is how Trump always wins negotiations. He wants 10. He asked for 100. They gave him 50, and then they think that they won, but he actually got 5 times as much as he really wanted. He got absolutely nothing.
Our 8-year-old's a better negotiator.
He has the 8-year-olds are very good lawyers.
Our 4-year-old's a better negotiator.
He got nothing, and he got nothing because he realized that being his usual strategy, which is to escalate threats until he gets what he wants, wasn't working because it was upsetting more people than it was scaring people, and that it was going to start hurting him directly. Yep. So he backed off of it, and he said, "Oh, you got to give me something." And he said, "Go fuck yourself."
Yeah. If we hadn't had a weekend of horrifying headlines out of Minneapolis, we might have spent more time on this, because he also had a really funny speech at Davos in which he called Greenland Iceland 3 or 4 different times.
Right. And then again, his fucking mouthpieces are like, he said it was a pile of ice. He never called it Iceland. And there's a replying to a video where he's calling it Iceland.
Also, how is he saying Iceland when he's on a teleprompter?
Because he's talking off the cuff, because he likes to talk off the cuff. On this point, like, we heard this hand-wringing from the media about, we should have been reporting Biden's mental decline earlier. All these people in the administration were complicit in hiding this from the American people. They had all right to know. Isn't it obvious that Trump is having at least as bad of a mental decline?
Yes.
And like, just no hand-wringing about that one, because everything else is so awful.
We're not sure if he's wandering around the room because he's mentally unwell or he just has to let some farts go. Reports from the inside are both are happening, and
he must smell so bad.
I think he smells real bad between the big aspirins and the burgers. So we have a baby who's awake, and that's the end of headlines. And if you want more on Davos, The Artifact is where you're gonna go.
Yeah,
it's really good. Listen to The Artifact.
Told me you were greedy, and baby, you weren't lying about that. I didn't understand the context. Now I see just where you're at. Everything becomes clearer once you take a step back. You've been playing me, baby. No, I'm not down with that. 'Cause I'm the queen of karma and I'm gonna jack your pay. Yeah, I'm the queen of karma and I'm gonna make you pay. I'm the queen of karma and I'm gonna jack your pay. Yeah, I'm the queen of karma and it's gonna be hell to pay.
So you have The Artifact this week.
I do have The Artifact this week. You may have heard that Davos is going on this week. I'm still waiting on our invite. I don't know why we haven't gotten our invite yet.
Now, it's located in Davos. Is that why they call it that? Or do they just call it that? Annual gathering of the World Economic Forum in the Swiss Alps. Oh my gosh, it must be a really nice hotel.
You think? They picked the Swiss because I guess they're neutral.
And because it's probably got a really nice hotel.
Yeah. Some skiing. You think Trump's doing a little skiing?
I can't imagine him skiing. No. He's not.
I can see him roll down the hill in a big snowball.
Not the right shape for it. But I bet you I know one strapping 60-year-old man that could be doing some skiing.
Who's that?
Mark Carney.
Mark Carney. Mark Carney gave a very interesting speech at Davos.
I think you might be able to say either way.
Macron did as well, in mirror sunglasses.
Mirrored aviators. A harmless but unsightly eye problem. And I feel like there's going to be photographs of him in these sunglasses forever, and no one's going to know why. So, like, wouldn't it be better just to have the eye problem?
Well, I guess it depends on the eye problem.
It's very unsightly, I guess. Or he's very vain.
It's funny.
Insert French joke now.
Right. Yeah. How many consultants do you think had this huddle to figure out what to do about his eye, weigh out the pros and cons, and more importantly, how much do you think they got paid for that?
They had to do a dot exercise.
Yeah.
Everyone who believes he should wear the aviators.
Or the top pro cons. They would do like focus groups. Okay. So Mark Carney gave a very interesting speech, which dovetails with some of the work that we did on the national security document and also like the Fall of the West episode. I think it speaks to Mark Carney, of course, is the Prime Minister of Canada. He is a liberal, the leader of the Liberal Party, but do not get that confused. I think people have this really strange idea of Justin Trudeau as like a social democrat, whatever. That's not what the Liberal Party really is. Mark Carney himself is a banker. He started Goldman Sachs. He participated in the destruction of all the saved wealth in Russia during the 90s as a member of Goldman Sachs. Then he moved to the Bank of Canada.
He also did bond market stuff in post-apartheid South Africa, so I can't imagine that's like...
Yeah. He was actually first asked to join politics by the Conservative Party in Canada too. So this is a very, what we would call maybe a neoliberal.
It's a very accomplished technocrat, private financial wealth manager guy turned technocrat.
Yeah.
He's the Canadian version, so he's like probably more progressive he's more progressive than the American version of this person.
I guess so. I mean, I guess you would say that he seems right at home in like the Obama Democratic Party to me, of like a banker with the ideas that like progressive neoliberal policies are actually good for the financial systems more than anything else.
Yes, I agree.
So anyway,
they call them blue grit liberals in Canada.
Blue grit liberals,
which are like business friendly liberals.
It's like a blue dog Democrat in the United States. I guess those are more working class.
No.
Aesthetically.
Yeah, I don't know what's gritty about it, but that's what Canada's just grittier.
Very gritty country. Famously. This is another like look at what the enemy is thinking, but I think this is more interesting as a knock-on effect of what happens when nationalism and fascism is rising in the imperial core, what happens to all these allies. I think there's this open question of like, if liberalism was a decadence that the U.S. ruling class did not need and can no longer afford, I think the question is like, what did they lose, or what are they going to lose by spelling with liberalism and the neoliberal world order?
Yeah, I think that like whether self-nominated or nominated by his peers, Mark was given the role of having to come out strong in favor of clinging on to the old way and calling out this new way as being short-sighted, selfish, completely outside the bounds of what we're supposed to be doing.
The other thing that I think is a big open question to me is if they're going to do this new type of imperial strategy, which focuses largely on the Western Hemisphere and a couple of key vital interests and has a more of like a shelter America, like Fortress America type approach, is that possible? Right. I think that they look at the world and they say we have a lot of sway and we haven't been using it because they don't really understand the relationship between fostering dependency and the long-term investment. They sort of see a lot of stuff, like a lot of jewels hidden behind the glass, and like, why don't we just break the glass, cash out now, get all this stuff, right? Because we have all this leverage, but they don't understand the long-term cost of calling in your like investments now. So I think this can be framed as here's what the consequences are. So
here's a consequence. What's the deal? The deal was that Trump played ball a little bit with Sheinbaum in Mexico on tariffs, but didn't play ball. Like Canada got screwed.
I don't know much detail about it except for it really freaked out the Canadian economy, which is highly dependent on exporting to the United States.
Yeah,
and has driven them into the arms of China. So unlike most of Europe,
good context because there was stuff up with Carney and China earlier this week.
Yeah, unlike most of Europe, the Canadians have been very open about increasing their economic ties to China, including importing a bunch of EV vehicles that are made in China. They've greatly reduced their tariff on Chinese imports. And they're also, I think, agreeing to do some cash crop production on behalf of China. So
they're also sending a bunch of their beef. So he had a speech, not at Davos or pre this speech, that was very friendly and accommodating and pro-China, basically, which you don't see a lot of that coming out of North America and Europe.
Yep.
And then apparently someone asked Trump about it. He said he thinks it's a good deal. The China-Canada is a good deal.
Well, that's another interesting question of mine is like this national security document says very clearly countries should all do what's in their best national interest.
Yes.
And we will encourage them to do so, right? Well, so it fits within the ideology that if Canada sees a better deal for itself by closing up to China, then they should do that.
So Trump is being ideologically consistent.
Yeah.
Carney, I think, is saying we can't, that is a bad idea for us all to do that, but let's get into the document.
Yeah. Okay. So the speech starts in French. I'm going to play his voice in English, but I'm going to read the transcript from the World Economic Forum, which was apparently done by AI. So I'm sure it's not at all what he actually said, but here we go. All right.
The transcripts are always done by AI.
Thank you, Larry. I don't know who the fuck Larry is. It is both a pleasure and a duty to be with you tonight in this pivotal moment that Canada and the world is going through. Today we'll talk about a rupture in the world order, the end of a pleasant fiction and the beginning of a harsh reality, where geopolitics, where the large main powers, is submitted to no limits, no constraints. On the other hand, I would like to tell you that the other countries, especially intermediate powers like Canada, are not powerless. They have the capacity to build a new order that encompasses our values, such as respect for human rights, sustainable development, solidarity, sovereignty, and territorial integrity of the various states. The power of the less powerful starts with honesty.
I think basically he just did a little summary in French. Now he's going to do his real speech in English.
Okay. The power of the less powerful probably does not start with honesty. I'm just gonna roll the dice on that. Here's him in English.
It seems that every day we're reminded that we live in an era of great power rivalry, that the rules-based order is fading, that the strong can do what they can and the weak must suffer what they must. And this aphorism of Thucydides is presented as inevitable, as the natural logic of international relations reasserting itself. And faced with this logic, there is a strong tendency for countries to go along to get along.
By the way, the Thucydides trap is the description of the high probability of war when a rising power threatens or displaces another established power.
Yeah, which is, I think, an explicit name check on the United States without making an explicit name check on the United States. And also says what we have been predicting for some time, which is that the only way that the rivalry between the United States and China can be settled is through war.
Mm-hmm.
To accommodate, to avoid trouble, to hope that compliance will buy safety. Well, it won't. So what are our options? In 1978, the Czech dissident Václav Havel, later president, wrote an essay called The Power of the Powerless. And in it, he asked a simple question: how did the communist system sustain itself? And his answer began with a greengrocer. Every morning, this shopkeeper places a sign in his window: "Workers of the world unite." He doesn't believe it. No one does. But he places the sign anyway to avoid trouble, to signal compliance, to get along. And because every shopkeeper on every street does the same, the system persists. Not through violence alone, but through the participation of ordinary people in rituals they privately know to be false. Havel called this living within a lie. The system's power comes not from its truth, but from everyone's willingness to perform as if it were true. And its fragility comes from the same source.
There's so much to say. First of all, I completely agree that there's been a rupture and that the rules-based order is a lie.
Yeah. And one that was sustained largely to people pretending it was real.
I think it's nuts that we're almost 3 years into it, the genocide of Gaza, and now we're talking about there being a rupture and then the rules-based order
Because
being
of Greenland, right?
Yeah, it's like it's like maybe it's just so absurd and shows you what people care about. But what I love about this is I think Mark Carney is telling all of like the middling countries of the world to remove their workers of the world signs from their windows.
That's what he's saying. Yeah, I mean, he's starting with an anti-communist thing because he understands it's politically advantageous to tie this sort of like widespread delusion of the Soviet Union bloc and tie that to the same kind of delusion that exists in the West, where everyone knew that Israel was running amok and that no one was allowed to say so. And you go back to Afghanistan and Iraq, all the way back to Vietnam, that these things that the United States' conduct on creating and sustaining a world order was beneficial to these Western countries. And so they tolerated what was obvious double standards and etc. I also think I don't think that at the time of this anecdote, there was anything meaningfully left about the Soviet Union. And it is an important reminder of socialism is essentially empowerment of working people to run their own society. Mm-hmm. And once you lose that, it becomes a cautionary tale.
Sure.
And now it's become a there is no such thing as socialism. It's all a self-delusion. There was a time, certainly, when people were willing to fight and die for the idea that workers of the world unite.
Sure.
And that includes in Russia and Czechoslovakia. That had just been, they had lost that because of so many sort of opportunistic errors that degraded it. So I think it's an important commentary about like political projects. And I think he's right in essence about how these lies persist. It's what the difference between what we talk about a lot is having principles and not having principles and just doing what you have to do. If everyone's doing what's smart, then principles disappear from the world.
Right. I mean, I think that was a very honest and fact-based assessment of that analogy. I think mostly it's just a useful analogy to make sure you get anti-communist rhetoric in there. Yeah. However, people are very familiar with what like discursive reality is versus like like material reality. So I think it's like his point that there are things that we all sort of say we believe in and we say we buy into, but they only really exist because we say we buy into them, and how fragile that is if someone breaks away or something like really extreme happens, like the entire world watches the genocide of a people.
Yeah.
That's correct. And we are definitely in one of those moments, and that the podcast we did on the decline of the West was very much about that.
Yep.
But like this is kind of built on very little academic, like it's built on very little intellectually or even materially. And it's very easy for it to all come apart. And I do think that like what communism looked like in the Soviet Union is a good example. But any of these sort of like in the 70s, any of these propagandistic sort of kind of high compliance situations are going to feel very. I don't necessarily have much going on except for the discourse and the rhetoric, which is also very true of how Trump operates.
Yeah.
We've talked about how it's all marketing and brand because it's all topical.
Yeah. It relies to a large degree, like look at the university system on like preemptive compliance. Like they're not even being forced to do it yet. They're already doing what they think they're supposed to do.
Yeah. So Carney is going to go with, we're not going to, this sort of rupture, this sort of like shifting of the way things are, this abandonment of our former way of doing it. We're not just going to pretend it's not happening or go along to get along. We're going to do something different. We're going to call it the way we see it and do something different.
Yeah. And by the way,
and what do you think they could possibly do different?
By the way, when people call Trump a truth teller, even though he lies all the time, this is what they're talking about, is that people's tolerance for listening to neoliberals tell half truths and present it as the obvious facts. People have fled from this. Like, look at like the discourse around NAFTA, where the options were to pretend with the liberals that NAFTA was bringing jobs to the United States and was untouchable or was going to destroy the United States' economy. And the right wing, which is willing to say this is a bad deal for American workers, and obviously has been, because we watched all these jobs get shipped out. And it was bad for everyone except for the elite in the United States, essentially.
Yeah, well, no one's saying that truth, though. He can look like a truth teller because he's cutting through the absolute bullshit that neoliberals feed you.
Right.
But he's giving an incomplete truth that says this is bad for American workers. We can do better. But really, it's just good for certain elites. And now there's a material reason why it won't be, that some of the elites think it would be better to become isolationist.
Right. And this is what happens when there's not a left, right? Yes. The left
are the truth tellers. The left are the truth tellers.
The left, such as existed at that time, was willing to tail the liberals on this issue, as opposed to staking out their own claim on what the reality is. And so, most MAGA voters, if you ask what the left-wing attitude on NAFTA is, they'll tell you that lefties supported it, which is crazy because the left as it existed all the way up until that point had been huge critics of NAFTA, but there was absolutely no voice to that because they're so busy trying to unite with liberals that they completely undermine their ability to represent what the reality is to regular people.
Wasn't NAFTA what was protested like crazy in the 80s and 90s?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Insane.
Let's get into what party could possibly be bringing us towards.
When even one person stops performing, when the greengrocer removes his sign, the illusion begins to crack. Friends, it is time for companies and countries to take their signs down. For decades, For decades, countries like Canada prospered under what we called the rules-based international order. We joined its institutions, we praised its principles, we benefited from its predictability. And because of that, we could pursue values-based foreign policies under its protection. We knew the story of the international rules-based order was partially false, that the strongest would exempt themselves when convenient, that trade rules were enforced asymmetrically. And we knew that international law applied with varying rigor depending on the identity of the accused or the victim.
That's got to be a shout out to Gaza, right?
I think that what he wants, I think he's trying to thread this needle where it's like we accepted this like less than ideal reality because it let us have some values, but because
And it allowed us to prosper.
And some of those values, I guess, is democracy building. But we all kind of knew that like it wasn't like a full reflection of our values. There were issues. I don't know if that's. I don't know. I didn't read that as Gaza. I read that more as like
What victims is he talking about?
as we knew the international law applied. Oh yeah, it's got to be a shout out to Gaza.
It is. It's got to be a shout out to Gaza. But you see, generally speaking, global South, brown people, but I think in particular Gaza.
Right. All right.
The Zionists will not be happy about that.
This fiction was useful. And American hegemony in particular helped provide public goods, open sea lanes, a stable financial system, collective security, and support for frameworks for resolving disputes.
And if you take that away, America, what will the world use you for?
What are you needed for? I mean, capitalism has reached a point where in order to have production that can grow as opposed to shrink, you need massive undertakings in producing of raw materials, moving those raw materials across the globe to places where they can be manufactured and assembled and then brought to places that can afford to buy them. You needed a global supply chain which cannot be accomplished by an individual country or even a region. And everyone understood that. Like, to have your dollar turn into $2 like 5 years from now or whatever it is, you needed to invest in these huge global undertakings. Like, think about like how much wheat or how much steel and stuff has to be created in mass and distributed all over the place for things simply to function now. That's where all that came from. That's what he's talking about. And people were willing to accept U.S. domination because, and this is what's always irritated me about these middling European countries who get to pretend that they're so morally superior, like the Scandinavian countries and things like this, where they have universal healthcare and stuff like this. All of that stuff was built upon a global supply chain, a global capitalist system, which had to be maintained by force. And for the most part, the United States was happy to pay for all that because they wanted to control it and they wanted to foster dependency in all these other places. Mm-hmm. So all these other places enjoyed the product at very, very inexpensive products produced through this global supply chain without having to pay for the military apparatus that allowed it to maintain it.
Sure.
And that's another question. It was like, I'm curious to see what he has to say.
Not because they were like trying to be freeloaders. It was because they were disallowed from engaging in any other way.
I think it's more to the point is they didn't have a choice. It wasn't a question of what we prefer. It was a question of you can either be a middling power or you will not be a middling power. But to be a middling power, you have to find your place within this global system. I think we're
agreeing. And he'll say that this was useful. This worked for everybody.
So we placed the sign in the window. We participated in the rituals. And we largely avoided calling out the gaps between rhetoric and reality. This bargain no longer works. Let me be direct. We are in the midst of a rupture, not a transition. Over the past 2 decades, a series of crises in finance, health, energy, and geopolitics have laid bare the risks of extreme global integration. But more recently, great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. You cannot live within the lie of mutual benefit through integration when integration becomes the source of your subordination.
I think that is a really good sentence.
Yeah.
I think that it's just, he's setting up I'm not sure it's correct, But he's setting up this, like, we built this lie together that was supposedly mutually beneficial, although who are we leaving out, people? Who is this mutually beneficial for? But
Yeah.
it was mutually beneficial for certain countries,
Mm-hmm.
certain business people, certain regular old middle class people. And it relied on this thing that what he's calling integration. And that is the very thing that he's going to argue Trumpian America is sort of lording over people and exploiting to get what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And because that's the cudgel, the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, my question, I mean, it's a good sentence rhetorically, but my question is like, hasn't that always been kind of true?
Yes.
So like what is this, a tipping point? Or what is the difference?
Because the objection is not subordination, because that was always there, obviously. And he's saying we were always subordinate, which is why we went along with this stuff, even though we knew it wasn't true. The problem now is the extraction. So like, let's compare China giving a loan to Venezuela that they never expect to get paid back.
Yeah.
Because they're looking 30 years down the road where they want to leverage that debt to get good return on investment on oil revenue and geopolitical control in South America.
Right.
Versus China saying, and this is what the United States is doing, we want the money back and we're going to destroy your economy today if we don't get this, and this.
Right.
Right. So it immediately creates a crisis in Venezuela where they're like, yes, you can force us right now, but we have to then look for an alternative power arrangement such that you can't force us today, tomorrow, right? There's no long-term strategy here. And that the irony is that Trump is always talking about how the United States only looks quarter to quarter, but we actually need to look longer term. They're calling in all this debt now. Like every bit of leverage they have, the tariffs are a great example of this, is we can get more today. And these liberals were weak because they weren't getting more today. But the problem with that is, you remove the incentive. Like if you empty out the bank account today, you remove the incentive of the other parties to participate going forward.
Yeah. So it's actually not that the integration is the source of the subordination. It's the integration is essentially they're leveraging this global integration, the economic integration, to destroy.
Yeah.
Not to subordinate.
Yeah. To extract everything they can now, smash and grab now. And they're doing the same thing to U.S. states to some extent. But they're going to smash and grab today and the future be damned. And part of that is because of Trump's particular attitudes. I think it also has to do with like this. Chris Hedges has this discourse about plutocrats versus oligarchs.
Yeah.
The U.S. oligarchy, such that it exists, as separate from like the international Wall Street types, they don't have as much of this foreign investment. They're much more interested in getting their hands on what they can get now, and that includes, I think, some degree the tech companies. So this is going to hurt like Wall Street, which backed Harris. So that's one big part of it. But I also think it's because they can't afford. Like there is a crisis that can't be fixed in traditional means, and so you end up going towards theft more and more. Like one of the reasons the German economy did so well under Hitler initially is because they stole a huge amount of wealth from Jews to prop up the economy because they couldn't generate profits on their own anymore. So I think that's a big part of this is welfare. This is the bar is facing rent, can't pay it anymore. So it's calling in all the tabs, right? And the fact that it's going to destroy our customer base tomorrow doesn't matter because I need the money today.
Yep.
The multilateral institutions on which the middle powers have relied, the WTO, the UN, the COP, the very architecture of collective problem solving are under threat. And as a result, many countries are drawing the same conclusions, that they must develop greater strategic autonomy in energy, food, critical minerals, in finance and supply chains. And this impulse is understandable. A country that can't feed itself, fuel itself, or defend itself has few options. When the rules no longer protect you, you must protect yourself. But let's be clear-eyed about where this leads. A world of fortresses will be poorer, more fragile, and less sustainable.
So there's plenty of countries that have been living that reality of not being able to feed and fuel themselves and not being protected by these rules. What this speech is like full of is like an existential anxiety that the middling countries are going to become balkanized.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it's like, I mean, listening to it is like kind of fun to hear him like try to stand up for something, but it's also like it's
Hypocrisy.
it's hypocritical, but it's also extremely anxiety producing
Mhm.
because they're like they seem concerned.
Yeah. They're I mean, he's right in saying that there's going to be a cost to this to everyone, including the hedgeman. What he would say probably is like the reality of the situation was we were never going to be able to do anything about the third world or the global south. What we could do was create a world order that benefited large numbers of people through integration, and we could keep doing that. But if the United States is going to behave this way, it's going to force everyone to retreat, and so everyone is going to become what the third world has been, which is still hypocritical. One of the consequences that he doesn't say here too, which I think is very important for the left, and why moments of fragmentation like this are really a big deal from the left. And I'll point out two examples. Chavez's Venezuela, which we've talked about at length, and also Greece, is that global integration was a death knell for socialist projects. In Venezuela, instead of building infrastructure, instead of building their own agriculture and leaning towards self-sufficiency at the cost of riches, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you sell oil and keep selling oil, you can have like luxury, you can have all the benefits of being part of global society, all the imports that are impossible to make within your own borders. But what you lose is the ability to be independent from a falling global oil prices / a sanctions regime.
And just to be clear, it wasn't just like luxury goods. They also used that money to build social programs, but they did not do it sustainably because they didn't build self-sufficiency.
So that's the thing, is social programs are not the same thing as building a socialist economy. And that, I think, is one of the things about the Venezuelan discourse that irks me so much. Is Saudi Arabia also has social programs for Saudi citizens based upon oil revenue. But in that case, we understand it as a rentier state because they don't tend to be leftist.
Yeah.
A social program where you get free health care at the expense of future generations being able to feed themselves is not a socialist project. Right?
I agree. I think we're just saying it slightly differently.
Okay. And then you move to Greece when Syriza took over.
Yes.
This was during the 2008 financial crash, and Europe, there was a huge hole in the economy that someone had to pay for.
Yeah.
And so they're going to push that debt. They're going to basically call up the debt in Italy and Greece to fill that hole so that they could continue on as if nothing had happened. And the Greeks rebelled against this and said, we'd rather default than have what they considered to be like a new Nazi takeover by Germany.
Yep.
When Syriza got into power, that they blinked because they looked at the situation on the ground, the raw numbers, and they said, if we default and go to loan, we don't have the infrastructure to feed our own people. So we will become a third world country overnight with no stability, no access to food, no access to goods, right?
Yep.
So if a different situation existed wherein Greece had spent 20 years understanding that they could not be dependent on the EU or the United States to feed their own people, but instead been building their own agriculture. And this requires a retreat from cash crops, right? There's all kinds of examples all over the world where if you create a cash crop because what we need is like raw tonnage from your country to combine it with a bunch of other countries to have this global supply line.
Right.
So that capitalism can grow. But if you say, I don't give a shit about that, we would rather be fed and not rich than participate in creating a cash crop we can't even eat so that we can get the imports we need, right? If you spend 20 years saying we will have a lesser economy that is more self-sufficient, and then Syriza takes over, it's a completely different analysis, right? Absolutely. So this is actually going to be a boon for the left, probably, and this is why imperialism is such a bad thing for the left.
Yes, and this is why Carney knows who he's talking to and what he's doing. He's starting with an anti-leftist example to set up that he is not a leftist, and the leftists are not going to have the solution here. Mm-hmm. But he's identifying the exact same problems and gaps that Syriza and Greece found, which is like you do not want to wake up the next morning and realize you do not have the things you need to support your people, and there's no rules protecting you.
Yeah.
And his hypothesis here is like that will happen if the United States continues to pursue this national security strategy and this diplomacy strategy, and we don't do something.
Yeah.
So what will the capitalists do?
Well, in this case, they're going to run to the other empire, which is just 50 years behind this one, and will do the same thing to them when it's necessary. But
he did do that, but that's not what the speech is about.
All right, let's see.
And there's another truth. If great powers abandon even the pretense of rules and values for the unhindered pursuit of their power and interests, the gains from transactionalism will become harder to replicate. Hegemons cannot continually monetize their relationships. Allies will diversify to hedge against uncertainty. They'll buy insurance, increase options in order to rebuild sovereignty. Sovereignty that was once grounded in rules but will increasingly be anchored in the ability to withstand pressure.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, it is very well. This is clearly written by people that understand how the financial and sovereign, like the rules around sovereignty and financial markets and how all that works together, how it's supposed to work. Like what the amount of leaning you can do on a country, what you're supposed to allow them to,
Right.
like what debt you're supposed to allow them to put off.
Yeah.
I mean, this is literally, I mean, this man probably does math equations about this. Like, I think that's probably what, yeah. So he knows what he's talking about.
And you can imagine like
it's fascinating to listen to him describe it.
You can imagine like the ideologues within the MAGA movement looking at us taking a light touch on countries that seem to be taking advantage of the United States or bullying the United States. And the liberals at top of being weak because they're not doing anything, while the liberals are secretly saying, are you crazy?
Yeah.
We're making a ton of money on this.
We're making a lot of money.
Why would we blow this up?
And we have all these math equations to say we can keep making money.
Yeah.
So shut up.
Yeah, if you turn the knob on pressure just a little bit, our return on investment goes down 5%. We're very happy with this.
Yeah.
This is the best, it's not us being more muscular.
It's also an issue with these like fascists. They're making an argument to populists, working class people who are pissed they're not seeing more. Mm-hmm. They aren't seeing more. They're not the victors here. Yeah. But the elites, whether they be the liberals who have like the knobs turned just right, or they have Trump in the Silicon Valley, they are getting the returns. They're just appealing to like a base element.
One of the things that I think is interesting about this again is that according to the national security document, the Trump administration would be in favor of people increasing their own sovereignty and self-interest. And I think there's probably some ideologues in the White House who believe that. There's obviously some who never believed any of that. What they wanted was imperial outposts and an unrestrained U.S. imperial machine. But I would, what do you say about countries saying, well, we're going to be more sovereign then, and the White House saying, good, we want you to be. You should be. That's better for everybody.
Well, Mark Carney would explain to you why it's not better for everybody, so I guess you could point them to that speech.
Yeah. I guess it's also, in a more globalized system, the United States is more dependent upon the mood of large numbers of countries instead of being able to take them on one at a time.
Well, that's exactly where he's going.
Right.
And he's going to say, you don't have a choice, because if we have 1 million fortresses, it costs everyone more money. It is infinitely more fragile. It's not possible. So don't even start down this road of like, I'll just protect myself and make my own fortress. You cannot do it. But if we have this sort of like middle option where we're not the hegemon and we're not the balkanized fortress, and we have a bunch of little flexible alliances, then we can shove our weight around.
Let's see it.
Let's see.
This room knows this is classic risk management. Risk management comes at a price. But that cost of strategic autonomy, of sovereignty, can also be shared. Collective investments in resilience are cheaper than everyone building their own fortresses. Shared standards reduce fragmentations. Complementarities are positive sum. And the question for middle powers like Canada is not whether to adapt to the new reality. We must. The question is whether we adapt by simply building higher walls or whether we can do something more ambitious. Now, Canada was amongst the first to hear the wake-up call, leading us to fundamentally shift our strategic posture. Canadians know that our old comfortable assumptions that our geography and alliance memberships automatically conferred prosperity and security, that assumption is no longer valid. And our new approach rests on what Alexander Stubb, the president of Finland, has termed value-based realism. Or to put another way, we aim to be both principled and pragmatic. Principled in our commitment to fundamental values, sovereignty, territorial integrity, the prohibition of the use of force except when consistent with the UN Charter, and respect for human rights. And pragmatic in recognizing that progress is often incremental, that interests diverge, that not every partner will share all of our values.
It's interesting to me that whenever they list principles, it's most of the principles have to do with boundaries and sovereignty.
Right.
And then there's like a throwaway about like human rights. But mostly they're like, it's just like, please don't freaking invade countries.
Yeah, please don't. Please.
These are our main principles, is that we have borders.
We colonize others. We do not become colonists.
Yes.
Okay, that's the arrangement.
So we're engaging broadly, strategically, with open eyes. We actively take on the world as it is, not wait around for a world we wish to be. We are calibrating our relationships so their depth reflects our values. And we're prioritizing broad engagement to maximize our influence, given the fluidity of the world at the moment, the risks that this poses, and the stakes for what comes next. And we are no longer just relying on the strength of our values, but also the value of our strength. We are building that strength at home.
What does that mean? Is that like preparing for war?
I think it's preparing for economic independence, but maybe war. That they sort of go hand in hand, don't they?
They do.
Since my government took office, we have cut taxes on incomes, on capital gains, and business investment. We have removed all federal barriers to interprovincial trade. We are fast-tracking $1 trillion of investments in energy, AI, critical minerals, new trade corridors, and beyond. We're doubling our defense spending by the end of this decade, and we're doing so in ways that build our domestic industries.
So, the world has ruptured. We can't do anything about it. We have to adapt. We shouldn't be like those guys. We should be principled. Here are some ideas I have. Cut taxes, get rid of regulations for trade, and put more money into the military.
Yeah.
Oh, and reshore.
Yeah.
What does this remind us of?
Yeah, I mean, it's a laundry list of things. This is the Reaganite position and reveals the neoliberals and Democrats in the United States and liberal parties around the world as a bunch of Reaganite parties.
And
There's a laundry list of things they've wanted all along, and now they have excuse to do.
Such a lack of imagination. We have a setup here in this speech that is talking about, like, has truly, I think, in a clear-eyed way, actually is laying out why these shifts have occurred, what it means for these shifts to occur. And then it's like, come with me on this journey. What if we just do what we wanted to do for the last 30 years and did do in the 80s? What do you think that's a good idea?
I thought this was supposed to be ambitious. I'm waiting to hear, like, here's a proposal for a middling power block which can counter the hedge funds. And instead what we get is, here's a neoliberal wish list which is going to make our domestic capitalists very happy.
Well, when we move to Canada, at least there won't be capital gains tax on us.
Yeah, there you go.
And we are rapidly diversifying abroad. We've agreed a comprehensive strategic partnership with the EU, including joining SAFE, the European Defense Procurement Arrangements. We have signed 12 other trade and security deals on 4 continents in 6 months. The past few days, we've concluded new strategic partnerships with China and Qatar. We're negotiating free trade pacts with India, ASEAN, Thailand, Philippines, and Mercosur.
So that is a direct result of the Trump tariffs, all the insecurity and volatility they're creating in trade relations with the United States. Is all the other countries are starting to create new, or at a much faster clip, and with new friends having trade agreements that they would have never had before. So it's essentially driving trade away from the United States, because it's creating trade relationships that wouldn't have otherwise existed.
Yes.
And China reported, I think, the largest trade surplus ever last quarter, because this is happening.
Yeah.
And they don't even want that surplus. They actually would prefer not to have that surplus. I don't remember why. This was economic reason. But like, it doesn't seem to be a way to create economic security for America.
No, I mean, what explains this? I think there's a couple of times where we've come across these MAGA ideas, which assumes things are static, which are not static. So, for example, in this case, that the U.S. is the global consumer and always will be. So if you want, you have to pay a premium to get access to the American consumer. But obviously what will happen is, if you fuck with the system, the American no longer becomes a global consumer. And I wonder if MAGA, just like the MAGA people are going to be paying more in rent because all of this cheap labor that they are dependent on without realizing it is being
Yeah.
deported right now. They're also not going to be able, there's no one going to be interested in selling things to Americans pretty soon.
Yeah.
They'll have other relationships.
Right.
Right now, those people are paying more for the same products because they're paying a tariff for it. And those products are going to find markets elsewhere. So there's going to be less,
Yeah. So because of this, the knock-on effect of this tariff, among other things, created I was correct, a $1.2 billion trade surplus for China, which was high, like 20% higher than any other trade surplus has ever had. They had to come out and say, like, well, we're not actively pursuing a trade surplus. We actually don't want a trade surplus. We would like to be a trade partner and be doing more importing as well as exporting. It just so happened that this happened because everyone was fleeing the tariff ship.
Because what do you spend all this money on? That's been the problem with China for a long time now. Is what they've spent the money on is U.S. debt because they had nothing else to buy with it.
Yeah.
So now they want to create a consumer base in China, and yet they're still being an exporter instead of an importer.
Right, and they're like, so they're saying, please don't be mad at us. We're trying to do more importing. We want to be everyone's trading partner.
Right. We want stuff. We want
don't-
good stuff for our budding middle class.
We'd rather be a trading partner than an adversary.
Right.
So then that dynamic is emerging at the same time as this rupture with the Trumpian whatever.
It's accelerating.
It does seem to be accelerating China's dominance.
It does.
Okay, well, as long as we're all on the same page.
Right. And I think,
And then you have Carney saying China is more predictable. I want to do work with China, which of course that would be what the Midland power would say that wants to.
Because capitalism in its ascendancy is much more stable and predictable than capitalism in crisis, like it is in the United States.
I can't believe that you'd call China a capitalist.
One argument that like the White House might make is like, if you're just from a game theory perspective, if you're playing a game and you're slowly losing it, you have to flip the board. So it seems unnecessarily accelerationist, but they understand that in the long term, they continue to play by the rules they were playing. They were going to lose. They have to do something drastic. I'm not sure if there's anyone who believes this will work besides ideologues and dummies. But
is this an opportunity to use Teresa from the Real Housewives of New Jersey flipping a table?
Yeah.
In some of our content for this episode?
That's a good example. She understood
Trump.
that socially she was going to be on the bottom if she did do something drastic. So she accelerated her descent into the bottom of the pecking order.
Well, she got some descent and then some ascent. She has a long and storied. I don't think we can do a complete analogy of her trajectory and U.S. capitalism. But
you have to admit that she's a Trumpian figure in that show.
Oh yeah, they all kind of are on that show though.
Oh really?
Yeah, she is a Trump. No, she is.
She's the Trumpian figure, and that's why we love her.
I mean, there's one that's a little bit more mob boss, and there's one that's like really terrifyingly like dangerous and psychotic. So I guess she is like the Trumpian. Yeah.
Who would be this psychotic person in U.S. politics?
Steve Miller.
I mean, it's psychotic in the sense of like
calculating,
moralless, calculating snake.
Yeah, there's a couple of those in Real Housewives in New Jersey. But it's not Teresa.
Not Teresa. Teresa will be your friend as long as you're nice.
And she has the same tan.
Oh, yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay.
We're doing something else. To help solve global problems, we're pursuing variable geometry. In other words, different coalitions for different issues based on common values and interests.
This is where the math nerd comes out on him, and he makes a whole argument about variable geometry. So please make sure you get the whole thing here.
Okay. Yes, this is good.
So on Ukraine, we're a core member of the Coalition of the Willing and one of the largest per capita contributors to its defense and security. On Arctic sovereignty, we stand firmly with Greenland and Denmark and fully support their unique right to determine Greenland's future.
It's so funny. He's like, and so my answer to this is variable geometry.
It's perfect principleless technocratic nonsense.
I know. And it sounds
devoid of politics.
I mean, I am sure this man actually has like the math to back it up because he seems like really like a nerd like that. But it's mostly just like we'll just have small, flexible alliances or groupings of countries that want certain things. All of us will just keep doing that.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not a very complicated solution, sir.
Yeah, that's literally what the Trump White House is doing. And he gets to come, I mean, it irritates me because he stands here like he's a big grown-up because he's a banker. And he plays a part of like the grown-up in the room very well. But he is just a minor figure doing a Trump move with better I don't know, optics. I don't know.
Well, I mean, he's going to have better optics. He's a Harvard grad. He went to Oxford. He plays hockey instead of golf.
I mean, isn't the war in Ukraine an example of hanging the sign in the window, where everyone pretends that like the United States was just Russia's the 100% the aggressor and nothing happened that would the United States meddling in Ukrainian politics wasn't like a national security danger for Russia.
It is absolutely hanging the sign in the window.
Right.
But he's not against hanging the sign in the window. He's basically saying now it's absurd to have the sign in the window.
Thanks a lot.
Take it down. Got to start again. Okay, let's erect a new thing where we all buy into certain truths so we can navigate this together.
I mean, what he's saying is Canada is willing to be the first one to take the sign out of the window. What he's really saying is we need some new signs.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like this is no longer this effort to pretend that this thing is happening. It got broken.
Yeah.
You know, the toothpaste is fully out. We cannot get the toothpaste back in. We can buy another bottle of toothpaste and start dealing with that toothpaste, and eventually that one will break too. But in the meantime, we can pretend that these things are true.
Which is that is such a threadbare political vision.
It's so intellectually disappointing too. You're like, is that really? We can't. Nothing.
Nothing.
So instead of doing that, so he's got to go from like it's this bullshit signs, and he's going to try to make you feel good about it by using nerd math. And when you realize that there's nothing there either, then you just have to accept that this is the best we've got.
Yeah. Why does talk about another fiction? Why does Denmark get a unique say in what happens to Greenland exactly? Most of the people in Greenland are not interested in being a protectorate of Denmark anyway. I mean, that's not a fiction, a colonial fiction.
Of course it is, but we are accepting only older colonial fictions need apply. No newer colonial fictions, asterisk, except for Israel, are allowable here.
Yes, so I mean, the narrow like Western European mindset of this is mind-boggling.
It is. Well, it's like these are the settled histories that we agreed on. Don't unsettle them. Don't do something different and new. Greenland belongs to Denmark.
Yeah, or we will do something new, but only if it's in our national best interest. Which is,
that's what the United States is saying.
Right. They're basically saying we agree with the Trump White House on how nations should behave.
But they want to pretend that they're going to do it like in a civilized way, where like their principles of sovereignty are at least as important as their practical considerations. Whereas they're claiming that like America first has no principles and it's all practical or short-term considerations.
Which is again to say, like, when we talk about these mass fictions we all participate in, those are dead. Long live those, is what it is.
Yeah.
It's just all the liberals have ever come up with in the face of the MAGA thing is what we used to do is dead. We'll keep doing the same thing.
Yes. So if you are a leftist, please notice the massive gaping void we could be filling.
Yeah.
With basic descriptive observations about what's materially happening and maybe some historical analysis, but maybe not even that. We could just start describing what's happening.
Yeah. Your job as a leftist is not to resurrect liberalism. Liberalism is dead. It's not coming back. And it sucked while it was here. So don't spend your time doing that. Well, build a vision that speaks truth to people's experiences about the world in a way that counters fascism.
The bar is so low, you really could just describe basic realities you're seeing, and people will be like, holy shit, man, this guy's got it going on.
Yeah. How hard is it for Mark Carney to say, when speaking about Greenland, we should be talking about the sovereignty of the people who live there, what they want, and protecting their borders. It has nothing to do with Denmark. It's just what is best for, if Greenland wants to be an independent country, they should be. Look, it's up to them. They have sovereignty and self-determination, don't they? But he can't even say that.
Why would Mark Carney say that?
Because it's consistent with his, it's not hard to say like the Greenland, what are they, Greenlanders?
Greenlandiers?
Greenlandians?
The green people?
They have the same right of self-determination as anyone else does. And we need to remove these fictions that they're the legacy of European colonialism. And it probably is better for everyone if Greenland controls their own shipping lanes and their own,
Well, and that's what I say, the people of Venezuela, they deserve self-determination away from Chavismo.
Yes, they do.
And the people of Iran.
Yes, that's also true.
But these are all, what you're saying is obvious and also like completely inaccessible. Right. No one actually believes those are options.
Right.
No one actually will speak about them.
Yeah. And the thing that's frustrating about that is they are true that there is no like third camp, third way in Iran or Venezuela, but that's largely because people refuse to acknowledge it as a possibility.
Right. There's
So
a
you're
complete lack of
Right.
imagination.
You're precluding the possibility of a third way by admitting before you even started that there is no third way. So we have to accept one or the other of this binary, which is lose-lose for working people in every instance.
So the indigenous people of Greenland make up 90% of the population.
I know.
It's mostly an indigenous.
Yeah. And it's a very small population.
Look gives you a completely different sort of.
Yeah.
sense
They're
of what's
not
happening.
Denmark people who like settled in Greenland. It's a colonial holding. And most of them were in favor of getting away
Well,
from
and this is
Denmark
why
until they were like, whoa, being
Well,
independent of the United States would be even
That's
worse.
why Trump just sees it as something you can just take because
Right.
it's just Inuit,
That's right.
Inuit people.
Exactly.
It's not real people.
That's right.
It's
Exactly.
Inuit people
But
settled
that-
on oil.
But
He-
yes.
It's just like as I was like, why is he fucking with Europe? It's because he doesn't see them as Europeans.
Correct. But here's the thing is, yes, but also Denmark
I know.
sees it exactly the same way. They never stopped and said, well, we have a vote.
There's only 57,000 people there.
Yeah, that's another reason. This is largely unpopulated, but it's not very big either. The map makes it look a lot bigger than this.
That thing that happened.
Yep.
I had no idea. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I thought they were Europeans.
No, Inuit.
Unbelievable.
Our commitment to NATO's Article 5 is unwavering. So we're working with our NATO allies, including the Nordic-Baltic Gate, to further secure the alliance's northern and western flanks, including through Canada's unprecedented investments in over-the-horizon radar, in submarines, in aircraft, and boots on the ground, boots on the ice.
Hockey reference.
No, I think it's a Greenland reference because what's happening in Greenland is one, they have rare earth minerals, but two, because global warming is a hoax and isn't real, the Arctic shelf is melting, opening up shipping lanes around Greenland that the United States wants to control.
We're in the worst timeline. Okay.
Like, can you imagine looking at a globe seeing there's a new shipping lane because global warming is absolutely real, that we have to grab a territory to control this new shipping lane, but global warming is also false and a hoax, and we shouldn't pay attention to it. That is the job of someone in the Trump White House.
To find all the new shipping lanes that have been melted away.
Right. And also pretend that that's impossible because global warming isn't real.
It's probably two people's jobs. Well,
The rest of them are too stupid to connect it to. God did it. God gave us a new shipping lane.
Now we have a shipping lane.
It's like that.
I don't know.
ASCAP for Q. Oh, it's like that Postal Service song where it gets just a reward for behaving themselves. They get a new shipping lane.
Who gets a reward?
Remember the song is global warming is not real. We're just being rewarded for our good behavior. Now we get to swim in November.
Shipping lane here, shipping lane there.
Yeah. What way to behave yourselves well, Americans? Like that would never happen.
Canada strongly opposes tariffs over Greenland and calls for focused talks to achieve our shared objectives of security and prosperity in the Arctic.
Whose shared objectives?
Yeah. Not listed. Sovereignty of the people of Greenland.
Yeah.
On plurilateral trade, we're championing efforts to build a bridge between the Trans-Pacific Partnership and the European Union, which would create a new trading bloc of 1.5 billion people. On critical minerals, we're forming buyers clubs anchored in the G7 so that the world can diversify away from concentrated supply.
Can I be part of the buyers club?
What's a buyer's club? Your answer for extractive industries that are built on the backs of slave labor is to make some G7 buyers clubs?
Yeah.
That's gross.
Real gross.
And on AI, we're cooperating with like-minded democracies to ensure that we won't ultimately be forced to choose between hegemons and hyperscalers.
Well, that might be a good idea.
Is AI a hyperscaler?
No, AI hyperscalers are the big five that are hyperscalers are the tech oligarchs.
He's referring to AI as a hyperscaler technology that we can't be dependent on the United States or China to get access to.
Hyperscalers are the massive cloud computing providers. So I think he's using it as a standard to talk about like Meta, Google, Amazon.
That we want access to them without having to make a deal with the United States? I don't think that's what he means. Wait.
Oh,
Put that-
I was taking it as we don't want if our options for salvation are either hegemons or hyperscalers, we're fucked. You're saying he wants
He wants the hyperscaler
without the hegemon.
Right.
Oh, he and I have different worldviews on this one.
I mean, they believe in a world that is absent a professional middle class and that is too expensive to maintain. And they believe that AI is the key to that it will unlock this explosion in production.
Cute that I can even, I'm such an optimist that I can read the best version.
I know, it is. It is.
Oh, jeez.
Pretty cute.
This is not naive multilateralism.
It is.
Nor is it relying on their institutions.
It sure is.
It's building coalitions that work, issues by issue, with partners who share enough common ground to act together.
Is that word for word out of the United States National?
It sounds like it out, doesn't it? Yeah. I mean, it sounds like the Trump people are getting everything they want. If you can take them at their word. Which
well, it definitely said in the strategy, like, we'll find common norms and we'll have partnerships when it works for us.
Yeah.
Mark Carney.
And you should do it when it's good for you.
Like,
do it when it's good for
like
us.
the episode of Scooby-Doo where Mark Carney takes off the mask and it's Trump, and Trump takes off the mask and it's like,
oh, yeah.
It's Reagan.
In some cases, this will be the vast majority of nations. What it's doing is creating a dense web of connections across trade, investment, culture, on which we can draw for future challenges and opportunities.
So globalism still.
Yeah.
But of a new type, which is set not around dependency on a hegemon, but in opposition to or independence of a hegemon?
Well, I think China will be in the web. So I think it's what it's trying to make you think of, like, all these interconnected webs that kind of create like a fabric, and like there's some bigger hubs and there's some smaller hubs, but they're all connected. And so it's not like
so
just the US with everything around.
It's not a wheel with a bunch of spokes. It's a cybernetic relationship as opposed to
it's like a neural network. It's best for hyperscaling.
It's probably not wrong.
It wants you to think about it that way. I don't know if it's a true reflection of what this would look like.
I wonder if that
also he's a math nerd, so I'm sure this connects.
This is not good for stability, but it might be good for growth.
But
I have to give it some more
stability. I mean, it certainly looks like it'd be stable.
Because if you were going to invest, let's say you had $10 billion to invest with your bank into a new production line that required 3 different countries in cooperation, and that the return on the investment was going to be great 10 years from now. In the old framework, you rely on the United States. You go to the United States and say, these 3 countries need to continue to work together for the next 10 years. It doesn't matter what little squabbles they have because I've got $10 billion on the line. In this new world where things are shifting rapidly based upon like immediate self-interest, a U.S. bank is not going to override like the national interest of those 3 countries if they decide to realign.
Right, but I think he's arguing that countries need to be disciplined and focused and not reactive. So you get behind the Ukraine thing and you're behind it for a good period. Even if you have a squabble or disagree about something else, you stay with that and your friends there. You get with China on some, I don't know, green energy deal, and you stay with that with them there with some staying power, even if you're also disagreeing about the Arctic freaking shipping lanes.
Yeah, but that's what,
if you're a financialization person, you need that. You need people to be like, we're in it.
Right. But there's no risk. That's a
idealistic idea.
It's purely idealistic. Yes. There is no mechanism for reinforcing that.
Yes.
If something better comes along.
I agree, but I do wonder if financial institutions could enforce it.
They have enforced it so far with reliance upon the petrodollar in the United States and the U.S. military. So this is the end of the petro. I mean, the petrodollar is over. If this is the case, everyone's going to be.
They can't just enforce it with like basically investment capital.
They can threaten not to do things in the future and basically saying if you can't protect our investment, we're not going to invest in you anymore. But the country has leverage because like it's just like when your stuff gets sent to a collector, right? They want the money. They want anything they can get out of you more than they want the whole debt, because at that point they consider it to be bad debt.
Yeah.
So if you have leverage as a debtor, all of a sudden, right? If you have the leverage to say, well, you're not going to get it all back, but if you get some of it, you can get some of it back if you play nice.
Okay.
Now, it's not good for financial institutions.
I don't know if Mark Carney is going to get into this in this speech.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is that there's some policy documents and math equations written on this. concept, then we'll have to explore those in a later episode. But let's see if he gives us anything. You're right. It does seem like it's idealistic. We know this.
Yeah. And that's one of the Trump's critiques of the liberal, this principles combined with realism thing, is that it's all idealism.
He's not wrong.
Nope.
Argue the middle powers must act together because if we're not at the table, we're on the menu. But I'd also say that great powers can afford for now to go it alone. They have the market size, the military capacity, and the leverage to dictate terms. Middle powers do not. But when we only negotiate bilaterally with a hegemon, we negotiate from weakness. We accept what's offered. We compete with each other to be the most accommodating. This is not sovereignty. It's the performance of sovereignty while accepting subordination.
He's talking about a union. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about a union, but for middling countries.
Okay, let's.
In a world of great power rivalry, the countries in between have a choice. Compete with each other for favor, or to combine to create a third path with impact.
What if we make one giant country out of the middle countries?
Well, that's what the EU is supposed to do. And the United States has prevented it from ever really consolidating into a unified bloc that can counter the United States. And to a large degree, the war in Ukraine became a war on the United States and the EU for that reason.
All of the railing against these over-empowered institutions that are fucking the United States in the National Security Strategy document is about this.
Yeah.
So we won't love it if they do this, but I think we could make greater Canadian European, and we could just have all the white folks above the equator just countryatize.
What I will say is, if he's serious about this, it's obviously in the interest of middling countries to do this, to do collective bargaining.
Yep.
It always is.
Yes.
However, if you relate it to labor history in the United States, they will go very, very hard to prevent it.
I know. It's
like we're going to get Pinkertons with aircraft carriers.
If he really is pursuing this, he's just declared war.
Yeah.
Yes.
We shouldn't allow the rise of hard power to blind us to the fact that the power of legitimacy, integrity, and rules will remain strong if we choose to wield them together. Which brings me back to Havel. What does it mean for middle powers to live the truth? Well, first, it means naming reality. Stop invoking rules-based international order as though it still functions as advertised. Call it what it is, a system of intensifying great power rivalry where the most powerful pursue their interests using economic integration as coercion. It means acting consistently, applying the same standards to allies and rivals. When middle powers criticize economic intimidation from one direction but stay silent when it comes from another, we are keeping the sign in the window. It means building what we claim to believe in. Rather than waiting for the old order to be restored, it means creating institutions and agreements that function as described. And it means reducing the leverage that enables coercion. That's building a strong domestic economy. It should be every government's immediate priority. And diversification internationally is not just economic prudence. It's a material foundation for honest foreign policy, because countries earn the right to principled stands by reducing their vulnerability to retaliation. So Canada. Canada has what the world wants. We are an energy superpower. We hold vast reserves of critical minerals. We have the most educated population in the world. Our pension funds are amongst the world's largest and most sophisticated investors. In other words, we have capital, talent. We also have a government with immense fiscal capacity to act decisively. And we have the values to which many others aspire.
Just like the Trump the national security document is a sales pitch.
Yeah.
Now we're going to get a sales pitch because every country now is going to be selling themselves to someone else.
Or he's sales pitching that maybe every country should just become Canada. He's certainly not sales pitching to get a bunch of American expats because they don't want us. It turns out they don't want us because they don't want us to take the jobs because their jobs are dwindling because of our tariffs.
Canada is a pluralistic society that works. Our public square is loud, diverse, and free. Canadians remain committed to sustainability. We are a stable and reliable partner in a world that is anything but. A partner that builds and values relationships for the long term. And we have something else. We have a recognition of what's happening and a determination to act accordingly. We understand that this rupture calls for more than adaptation. It calls for honesty about the world as it is. We are taking the sign out of the window. We know the old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy.
So nostalgia is not a strategy seems like a really obvious anti-fascist thing to say. But it also seems like he read the national security strategy and some of the other like trad family strategies, like family first strategies coming out of the White House.
Mhm.
And it's like, you fucking idiots, that's not a strategy. You know what a strategy is? A triangle, some geometry.
I mean, it's an attack on the whole concept of make America great again, right? That's what it is. And it is built on fascist nostalgia.
But we believe that from the fracture, we can build something bigger, better, stronger, more just. This is the task of the middle powers. The countries that have the most to lose from a world of fortresses and a most to gain from genuine cooperation.
It is definitely true that they have the most to lose in a world of fortresses because they aren't China and they're not the United States.
Yep.
So all they would do is just good money after bad, building up, I guess, a fortress with no real promise of being safer or more.
They'll never be able to catch up, so
Yep.
they'll always be a proxy.
Yes.
Yeah.
And they will potentially be always afraid of being invaded, I guess, in this new world.
Hypothetically, although I'm not sure.
We-
He's being really
Yeah.
not anticipating that.
So we haven't seen it yet, but it's certainly like in shock and awe January. They certainly want us to be walking around believing that the U.S. could just invade anything. Now we haven't. There's like I think the whole Greenland like thing is partially a rhetorical device to get us all thinking that at any point the U.S. just boom, boom, boom takes countries. It's not true yet, but it does seem to be what they're kind of like stoking.
I mean, maybe it's just the fact that someone has convinced Trump that it's a really good idea for the United States to control Greenland. And he believes that if he exerts U.S. power in a direction, he will get what he wants. Or the United States will get what it wants with him at the helm. So it's frustrating to him that this seems harder than it ought to be because he wants it.
He's like,
and
there's
therefore he
just
should have it."
57,000 people there. I don't understand.
The powerful have their power. But we have something too. The capacity to stop pretending, to name reality, to build our strength at home, and to act together. That is Canada's path. We choose it openly and confidently, and it is a path wide open to any country willing to take it with us. Thank you very much.
Fully fascinating artifact.
It is. It's totally fascinating artifact.
It's not exactly what we said it was. It meanders. And as with all these speeches, you never really know what you're supposed to be taking at face value and what's kind of like subtext or rhetoric or just plain bullshit. Fucking fascinating.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta imagine there's like yesterday's technocratic like elites are just pulling their hair out watching this fall apart after they spent so much time and energy and money building it and maintaining
you think
it.
Most of those people would be happy with what Carney has to say?
No, I don't think. I mean, not the people in the not like the powers aligned behind like Obama, Biden wanted to prevent this. And we're willing to go very, very far and spend a lot of money to prevent this fragmentation and even worse, a collective bargaining of all these places that they had intentionally fostered dependence on. They don't want Germany to be
I agree, but clearly
a trading peer. They wanted Germany to be an appendage of the U.S. empire.
Clearly they've lost. And some of these people, if they claim some principled allegiance to like liberal democracy in order for their capital to be getting good ROI, they might be like, I guess we gotta jump ship and do this now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the smart money is to invest
I think it might be.
Right. Because even if like, you know, we end up with Gavin Newsom in 2028 you don't know if you're going to get JD Vance 4 years later. So you can no longer like rely on like one section of the U.S. ruling class and their interest to be stable enough to dominate. You have to diversify. Like that's what he's saying is like it's gone because you'll never be able to trust the United States' disposition towards international relations again. Because this is there and it's not going away, and now we have to do something else. So they have to pivot, but like amazing to watch them having lost this skirmish inside the U.S. ruling class and then watch it basically be what they've built be smashed.
But don't you want to know who of the U.S. ruling class is in Mark Carney's calendar for the last 2 weeks and the next 2 weeks?
Yeah. No.
I mean, this guy worked.
I bet you Goldman Sachs is.
This guy worked in the United States for Goldman Sachs for multiple decades. He's a Harvard alum. He's completely connected with all these folks, and he's probably very well connected in England. And he's got triple citizenship, which means you're hoarding it. I'd like one of those citizenships. He's Irish.
Hoard everything.
He's Irish, and he's got UK citizenship. He's worked in a lot of like banking around international development and international markets. Mm-hmm. He must have quite the Rolodex.
Yep.
Like he didn't surprise anyone with this speech.
Yeah, I would imagine not.
So,
I mean, it's what they're doing.
I want to know the next steps. I want to know.
I mean, the next steps is I think there's probably a lot of European nations who are going to be taking meetings either with Canada or like Canada's been taking.
And it might not just be Canadian nations. I mean, he's doing a lot of meetings with
China. Not just Canadian nations?
How
many Canadian nations are there?
I've already bought into the Greater Canada. Maybe they'll loosen up their citizenship laws if they get bigger. I would imagine there's also a lot of meetings with like Asian nations, especially if they're trying to like parlay. If China is basically like, please, we're your best friend, we'll trade with everybody. We want to be friends with everybody. And China and Canada is going out of their way to be like, yes, sir. Then that opens up a bunch of trading relationships that are beyond like the classic West.
Mm-hmm. But are you going to get economies of scale, or is there going to be retractions in all of these major economies?
I mean, they're already retracting, aren't they?
Supply line. No, they're not, but they were going to probably this year and next year, and then it may continue into a plummet.
We also think the U.S. economy is going to retract. So if these massive economies begin retracting, does it mean that these middling union countries could absorb some of it? Or I don't know. I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I think like once the economies of scale / global supply chains are disrupted, you don't get that return on investment from other pursuits.
Yeah, but they're not all going to be disrupted because right now China is not disrupted. I mean, it sounds like China is disrupted because its surplus is too big.
Right, which is a disruption because that's not what they want to be. They don't want to be the global factory. That's a big problem for them because you need something to spend that money on. You can't just infinitely increase productive capacity forever, which is what they've been doing.
Maybe Canada needs some of that money to build Greater Canada.
Well, so then China lends the money, and suddenly you're in the same relationship you had with the United States as a hegemon, but with China. And that is certainly, from my point of view, what China's long-term strategy is to create the same kind of subordination that he's complaining about. So I don't see it. This is played out before. In one version, right? And we call that World War II, where all the great powers went to war and all the middling and third world countries were caught in the mix as either proxies or appendages or what have you, imperial.
Yeah, Mark doesn't want that.
No, he doesn't want that. He has a vision of weathering this great power conflict in a different way. The question is whether you can do that as a capitalist country with the requirements of a capitalist economy to grow year after year, right? To deal with the crisis of overproduction in your own borders and around the world, to progress from manufacturing to financialization, which requires economies of scale. If those things are compatible with the vision he's laying out, and I'm very skeptical. Like, if you were to do what socialism does and remove the requirement that something needs to be purchased at profit to be produced, this is easy. This is instantly tomorrow. This could be done.
Do you think we should submit that idea to Davos?
I think we should. I think if they let us speak, I'm waiting for our invitation. If you just invite us, we can solve this problem for you.
We're like, guys, go with us on the story. Everything Mark Carney said, but like, put it on easy version.
Just do socialism. Take all the rich people, dispossess them of their wealth, and you have problem solved.
Can they keep a little bit?
No.
They're never going to invite you.
Look, do they want to be independent of a hegemon or don't they?
You got to do you got to do it Chavez's way. You got to let them keep a little bit.
Well, that worked out right.
See how we just get back on this merry-go-round over and over again?
Yep. Any concession is just the first shovelful of digging your own grave.
What I'm learning is that you actually do need to listen to our podcast, like, in episodic order.
Oh, yeah.
We're building a curriculum here. And it builds on itself.
Don't you hate those shows where you can't just watch it episodically, but you have to tune in order? It's really annoying.
Yeah. And so if you're at this episode and you haven't listened to all 19 preceding episodes, you need to stop. Go back to the beginning.
Congratulations on making it to episode 20.
As you grow
Done and dusted.
Your powers will fade as you grow old. You're on the make and you don't do regret. You're always out for what you can get. You think like a snake and you ooze like a snail. Let the trail go cold as you swallow your tail. With your low rent skills and your heart of flint, telling your tales that are unfit to print. You're all weasel words, backed up by the boots, obsessed like the rest, with a promise of loot. Your pies will fade as you grow old. 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 You demand of the sea, it obey your commands. You grab at the land with both of your hands. But candles will burn and time will reveal all that you've done and the money you steal. The suffering you're causing gives you no pause for thought. You've got your claws in the dead summer's heart. Birds will return as the birds always do. When they come home to roost, they'll feast on you. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow old.